I wanted to talk about awakening, spiritual awakening, and trauma, or the traumatized nervous system, and specifically why awakening itself will not suddenly heal years of trauma. It cannot suddenly heal years of trauma. You could say that awakening on one hand and trauma recovery on the other hand, they're two different paths in a way. I mean, they do cross each other, they are related for sure, but just awakening in itself is not enough to tend towards healing a traumatized nervous system. So I wanted to share this information, or my experiences really, because there's a lot of people out there that they've maybe found awakening teachings or non-duality teachings, Buddhism, Dharma, and they've also got experiences of PTSD or CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or they may have trauma-related physical symptoms like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, maybe IBS, Crohn's, a lot of things, or chronic fatigue is another one. A lot of these symptoms which are kind of driven by a nervous system that's been traumatized over years. And then we find the path of awakening, we find teachings on non-duality, and we think, that's it, that's the answer, that's going to heal me, that's going to fix my trauma, so to speak, it's going to heal my trauma, I'll just wake up and I won't have any problems. And a lot of people are finding, quite naturally, that they may have shifts in identity, awakening experiences, deep insights, and shedding a lot of the delusion of mind identification and the delusion of self-view, and yet the nervous system is still traumatized. It still responds and reacts to life in a dysfunctional, dysregulated way. So I wanted to explore that a little bit. Now, I might chop this video together here and there because I want to cover a little bit of ground. So if there's the odd edit here and there, I'm sure you can accept that. But I want to be clear to begin with about what I mean by trauma. So a lot of people, well, it seems quite common nowadays. I hear people talking about, my traumas. And that's wonderful that it's kind of in the public eye, in the public conversation, a lot more than it ever has been. However, there's a difference between having some experiences that felt a bit traumatic at the time and having a nervous system that's traumatized. Being traumatized by these events so that we are dysregulated. You could say that there's a dysfunction going on. And the reason I mention that there's a difference is because actually we can go back, if we have a healthy, regulated nervous system, I say healthy, regulated nervous system, moderately, it's not dysfunctional. We can go back and maybe experience some of these traumatic events and work with them and open to them emotionally with relative success. We can use the mind to guide our exploration into the body to try and unpack some of the hidden emotions. Often this is called shadow work. In non-duality circles, it's called shadow work. So there may be traumatic events there, but because we've got a reasonable amount of self-regulation and co-regulation, we can explore this. And that's amazing. So it's different from having PTSD or CPTSD. So post-traumatic stress disease or post-traumatic stress dysfunction. And the reason it's different is because those that are suffering with a traumatized nervous system that's dysregulated, your life changes completely. You're living every day with a body, an energetic body and being that doesn't really work properly. I mean, that sounds a little bit odd. I'm not trying to say that with a sense of shame because I have this myself, but as in the nervous system does not react to stimulus in a healthy way. It overreacts. We find ourselves locked in states of hypervigilance, in constant fight or flight responses, and often moving back even further into recesses of freeze and functional freeze. You know, sometimes the nervous system shuts down and we can experience things like fatigue or chronic pain. So there is a difference between having some traumatic events in your life and being traumatized so that our nervous system is dysregulated. So this video is kind of pointed towards those that are suffering with nervous system dysregulation through traumatization, and they're looking to wake up, or they've been on a path of awakening for a little while. So it might be helpful if I read some symptoms of what PTSD or CPTSD is, so you can feel into, well, is that me or not? Because actually it can be a bit murky. It took me a long time to realize, oh, what's going on with me, with my body, with my being, with my energy. Yeah, there's something behind it. There's something real behind it, as opposed to, I know, just being mysterious and broken. So some of the symptoms, I'm going to read from my phone whilst I do this. Some of the symptoms include like flashback, memory lapses, inability to control emotions, hyperarousal or hypersensitivity, sleep disturbances like insomnia, waking up in the middle of the night with terror, those kind of things, substance abuse and misuse, so often drugs and alcohol, low self-esteem, nightmares, chronic health conditions, dissociative disorders where it's hard to describe, but we fully disassociate from the moment into depersonalized or derealized states, autoimmune conditions. You've also got like feeling very angry or distrustful towards the world, like continuously. It arises for no reason. Feeling that like you're permanently damaged or permanently worthless, that you are broken on a fundamental level. Feeling like people can never understand what happened to you and therefore you need to hide it. There's deep existential shame involved. Avoiding friendships or relationships, and suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation and rumination, you know, where the mind just ruminates, often on feelings of low self-worth, but sometimes into suicidal thoughts. So these are some of the symptoms of PTSD and CPTSD. And it's these symptoms that when we pay attention to, they can tell us, oh, actually, maybe my nervous system and my body, my being has been traumatized over a number of years, and there's no quick fix for this. I can't just wake up out of this, because the nature of awakening is one of seeing through delusion. And it's beautiful, isn't it? We can see through the delusion of a separate self. So by investigation into the nature of experience, using inquiry and meditation, I can ask questions to uncover some of the illusions that filter the way I see the world. And by pulling down those filters, you know, like seeing through the delusion, then there's a sense of freedom that arises. We recognize we're not just what we thought we were. And we awaken to a much more fully felt, rich life. One that isn't mind identified, one that's embodied and energetic, connected, not separate. So that's the path of awakening. However, no amount of insight, it doesn't matter how deep that insight goes, no amount of insight will regulate your nervous system for you. It just doesn't work like that. So what you might find is that you might be having these deep insights on the path of awakening, and you'll feel delusion being seen through, or structures falling down, and a sense of liberation, maybe a sense of freedom in the being. But then what happens is some of these conditions that I spoke about before, some of these symptoms, they start to arise. Feelings of deep desperation, dread and despair, maybe nausea, actual nausea in the stomach, heat rising up and down the body, sweating, the body crying itself. What I mean by that is kind of crying that's not got any emotional content, and it doesn't stop as well often, like this crying, just the body cries itself and cries itself and cries itself for no apparent reason. These are often symptoms of a traumatized nervous system struggling to find regulation once we've pulled away a lot of the defense mechanisms of self-identity, really. So why am I making this video? Well, I guess it's to show or to encourage people that if you're on the path of awakening and you're feeling some of these symptoms of trauma and traumatized nervous system, and you don't know what to do, you can work with the nervous system and the trauma itself in a slow, attuned, mindful and compassionate way, so that, well, we heal, we begin to heal. And we don't have to, in fact, we probably shouldn't rely upon just deeper and deeper insight. Because, like I said, the insight will only take you so far. It will free us potentially from the mind-identified world of thought. But actually, that mind-identified world of thought, it did protect us for a long time. Certainly if we've had adverse childhood experiences and trauma in our life, being able to pull away from the moment, contextualize and give the illusion of control actually keeps us safe, especially early in life. It keeps us safe. It's there for a reason. So when we start pulling that apart, things can feel a little desperate. And nobody, it seems, well, not nobody, but very few people in the world of awakening are talking about this. So what it can mean is that you can feel alone. You can feel very alone. You can feel it like you're doing awakening wrong. Like you're not. Yeah, everybody else is getting this kind of peace and this samadhi and this stillness from no self-realization. Yet what people that have suffered with trauma can get is just hypervigilance, hyper-dysregulation, deep despair and deep sorrow arising, the body going into shutdown, sometimes pain, physical pain, nausea, digestive issues, headaches, which is a natural trauma response. So if that is happening to you, you're not alone. And there are people that are pretty dedicated to exploring this, myself being one of them, of exploring how to tend to the nervous system in a gentle, consistent way, as well as to encourage our awakening process, freeing the mind and healing the heart, healing the body, healing the being. Because actually the freeing of the mind from the prison of mind identification, when it comes to trauma, like deep embodied trauma, it isn't enough. It just isn't enough. It will not just regulate us. It can't do that. Regulation is something that, or nervous system regulation is something that healthy children learn very early on in their life. Whereas often the traumatized nervous system never had chance to learn how to regulate. So we need to begin to learn how to do it, basically for the first time. And we can't do it on our own. We need resources. We need resources that encourage gentle, steady practice. So I'm going to try and make a few more videos like this in the future for those of us that have experienced trauma, that are on the path of awakening, are finding it difficult and noticing that actually this sense of being traumatized and these symptoms that I mentioned before that pop up, these symptoms of PTSD and CPTSD are popping up along the path of awakening. How do we work with it? Why is it that all the inquiry in the world doesn't seem to heal this damaged nervous system? Well, the reason why is because it can't. It never could. The only thing that can heal the nervous system is for it to learn how to regulate effectively, how to switch between fight, flight and freeze modes, the hyper aroused modes of protection, and rest, digest, ease and connection, how to naturally move between those modes. That can't be attained with a sudden insight, but it can be learned over time physically with consistent kind practice. So hopefully I'm going to start sharing some of those practices, I think. Some of the ones that work with me. I'd like to speak to others that maybe have practices that they use, that they've come across on their trauma healing journey, that they can share with the world. I think working in community is one of the most effective ways we've got of trying to heal ourselves, trying to heal a traumatized world and a world full of people with traumatized nervous systems. So if anyone's got any suggestions about what they do and they want to get in touch and have a chat about how they tend to their own trauma healing process, I'd love that. That'd be really good. And we could share that with each other. I'm also going to share some resources as well moving forward. So the things that I use, things like somatic experience in practice, as an example, some of the books that I read, some of the YouTube videos that I come across. Yeah, just trying to openly share information that I know can help others because it has helped me. I'll probably leave it there for now, but I'd really look forward. So if anybody is out there that wants to reach out and make contact, please do. I'd love that. And wants to share a little bit about how it's going. But if you're on this path of awakening and you're finding that the awakening process itself is not healing your trauma, well, that's natural, and there's a reason for that. That's because seeing through delusion cannot heal trauma just on its own. We need to build new practices, embodied practices of healing in order to allow us to heal.